Although session has ended, the Select Committee on Living Wage Jobs continues to meet. Joining me right now is the chair of that committee, Representative Ryan Winkler, to talk a little bit about what they've done thus far. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So, Representative, let's talk about the meetings that you've had so far. What have you been taking from them?
Well, the big thing we've been trying to do is understand the state of the economy for the average worker in Minnesota. For a long time, we've had a model in this state of a strong, healthy economy where the benefits of that economic growth are spread out to a lot of people. So you could have a good job, raise a family, have a good quality of life in this state without having to be the head of a company or without being a high-wage, high-level professional. You could live your life and get by and have a pretty good life in Minnesota. And that has started to erode pretty significantly in this state, much like the rest of the country. We used to be a leader in median wage, for example, and that's been falling. We had very low rates of poverty, and compared to the rest of the country, we still do, but that's been going up. And the kind of jobs that we're creating in this economy are low-wage jobs that focus in the retail, food service, temp worker, and the low end of the healthcare sector. So we've got some big challenges, and a lot of what we've done so far this session, or last session as we were gathering information, is just to understand the state of the economy today for those workers.
In the meeting that you held the end of June, something really drew my attention, and that was coming from Greg Leroy from Good Jobs First, which is a national nonpartisan organization, and he stated that studies show that state tax breaks are not a driving factor where for businesses who plan to expand or relocate. And yet the tax bill that was just passed really goes in that direction. When you look at the tax breaks for Mayo, Mall of America, 3M, there are billions included in this. So you're not the chair of the tax committee. So understanding that, but as chair of this committee, how do you move forward with that knowledge?
Well, we know that politicians like to pass bills that create jobs, and generally the way they do that is through subsidies or through tax breaks. Most of those things don't work because at the state level we have to balance the budget. So in order to provide one tax benefit to one company, we have to tax another company, another person, or we have to cut some service or some benefit somewhere. It's a net zero for any particular kind of job subsidy. But what we were trying to do is say, looking at the reality that people do this is a political reality, that people want to pass these types of things. What are the best kinds of incentives we can do? What are the things that actually create jobs and not kind of be the worst to kind of work at cross purposes for other things we're trying to do. So we can't kind of change that whole political world, but we can hopefully do a little bit better job and focus on things that will work best.
Something else that he stated was that quality workforce and proximity to customers and vendors are significant reasons to stay put or to relocate here or somewhere else. And the legislature did identify that workforce development is key and increased funding in that capacity. Do you think it's enough?
I think that making workers more productive helps bring in capital, helps bring in companies who want to locate here. That is part of the equation. But in Minnesota, workers are more skilled, more productive, more educated than they have been in the past. And yet if you look at the wages that they're receiving for that work, it's still declining compared to the economy as a whole. So it's not enough just to have an educated workforce that will draw in companies. You have to have an economy where the average person can actually support themselves and their family and hopefully provide a little better life for their children ahead. And if you don't do that, I don't think we're doing enough.
And that's a perfect segue to this next question, which has to do with increasing the state's minimum wage, something you fought valiantly for last session, likely to come up again next session. What do you think a living wage job is and a livable wage job is in relation to minimum wage?
Yeah, I mean, we should not be confused to think that a minimum wage is the same as a living wage. In Minnesota, statewide average, a bare bones budget, which means you just pay for housing, transportation, childcare, healthcare, food, no vacations, no savings, nothing like that. A bare bones budget statewide for a family of four takes 2 jobs at $14 an hour. So that's significantly above the minimum wage that we proposed in the House this last session of $9.50 an hour. But one of the things that happens when you raise the minimum wage is that you do put upward pressure on all wages at the lower end of the economy. So that will help move more people into a better wage job. And we recognize that moving right to a $14 an hour minimum wage would be really outside of the mainstream in this country. And historically, to some degree. But I think that over time we need to continue to move up the minimum wage to make sure that the buying power of the average worker keeps up with the economy.
And the GOP, including Senator Julie Rosen, who we spoke to about this issue, they contend, and they contend to this day, that it would kill small businesses, by increasing the state's minimum wage. And you have obviously disagreed with that statement.
That's the same argument opponents of the minimum wage have used since 1938 when FDR first signed a minimum wage into law. The same argument was used in the 1980s, the 1990s in Minnesota, when the federal minimum wages increased. There's just no evidence, there's no reality that raising the minimum wage costs jobs. And one of the reasons is that when workers make a little bit more money, they tend to stay in those jobs longer. There's less turnover. And by decreasing turnover, you actually reduce business cost. Now, it's not the kind of thing that's easy for a business to predict. They just see a cost increase. But the combination of lower turnover and greater demand, because more money is in workers' pockets to spend, actually nets out the change in the minimum wage.
But why not just let the market drive the wages? If you have a good employee, you're going to compensate him or her accordingly.
Well, the challenge is that the market is driving wages down, and as the labor market is driving wages down for a variety of reasons, I think, the average consumer doesn't have the money in their pocket to go out and buy the things that business needs. So you're focusing entirely on the supply side of the economy, the business side of the economy, and not on the consumer side. And if consumers can't buy, there is nothing going on in this economy.
And how does this marry in with the recommendations that you hope to make down the road from the Select Committee?
Well, obviously, these issues are they're economy-wide, they're nationwide issues. In fact, they're global issues in a lot of ways. So the state of Minnesota and the 2014 legislative session is not going to completely turn this around. But some of the things that I think are going to be important will be a minimum wage. It will be looking at wage and benefit standards for employees, for example, paid sick leaves. Some states have pursued a paid time off insurance program, which is for pennies a week. You can actually give people a chance to take care of sick relatives and friends. That's a huge issue for women and for low-wage workers. So there's a whole range of things that we're going to be proposing. I think it will probably be too much for the 2014 legislature to take them all up, but I hope we can make some progress.
And my last question for you, the committee is about to embark on listening tours, listening sessions across the state. Any expectations as you head out and listen to folks?
Well, we're going to go out with one simple question, and that is, how is Minnesota's economy working for you? And we want to hear from people. I hear anecdotally from people who say, look, I've got a graduate degree, I've got a professional degree, and I'm stuck at 20 bucks an hour. I should be able to, with a graduate degree and a decent job, I should be able to save for my retirement and for my kids' education, and those are luxuries I can't afford. So I think we're going to be hearing a lot from people, not just restaurant workers, but from people all over the economy who are saying that my earnings are simply not keeping up with the cost of living and we need to do something else.
Okay, Representative Winkler, we hope to get you in when you complete these tours. Thanks for coming in. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.